situation is carbon dioxide is warming the planet, and we know that this is happening. We've got ice core records that have been reconstructed that go back 800,000 years. They show a really strong relationship between carbon dioxide and temperature. And it's also been demonstrated that it's the carbon dioxide that goes up first and that temperature follows. So we know that the carbon dioxide concentrations are a driver of heat, of the increased heat capacity of the atmosphere, and that's what warms the planet. And we're now well above. Can you see my? Just put a thumbs up, Claudette. Can you see my cursor? Yep. We're well above the paleo record sort of maximum concentrations of carbon dioxide, and if we increase the temperatures as much as that, here we're looking at sort of a 6 degree warmer world following this kind of relationship, and that's pretty scary. It takes a long time to get to that, so thousands of years to really for that to stabilize at that level, but certainly hundreds. But what we're doing at the moment is just this sort of releasing, in some ways, a carbon bomb into the atmosphere, which is then increasing the heat substantially. We can see on this plot on the right-hand side, which is a recent release from the IPCC, that when we use simulations of the Earth's climate system, we can really well represent what's been happening in the historical period from about 1850 onwards, depending on where you are. And we cannot reproduce this observed trend without including human-induced factors into the climate system. So when we just use natural only, it just putters along at normal levels. So this is what tells us, and I've got a whole nother presentation that goes into this. This is what tells us that it is humans that are warming the planet, and we're doing it by burning fossil fuels. Now, the biggest issue that we've got here is actually that we're releasing too much CO2 into the atmosphere, and we're not removing enough CO2 from the atmosphere. So it's really important for us to stop releasing any, but it's also really important for us to remove the additional that we've already put in there. This is another release from the IPCC report. So that's the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. They are a group of scientists who look at all of the published research. They don't do any research themselves, or well, not for this job. They do research for the rest of their jobs, but this particular job is looking at all the research that's been published and say, given that this is what we know in the published arena, what can we say about climate change and how the climate system works? And so here we can see the historical warming trend, and then that overlaps slightly with the projections. And we can see here that for every single ton of carbon dioxide that we release into the atmosphere, there is a known amount of climate warming that we should expect. The relationship is linear. This means we just want to stop putting carbon into the atmosphere, and we need to take it out. Now, at present, this amount that we've already released from basically the 1800s to now is the equivalent to 2 Amazon rainforests worth of carbon released into the atmosphere. And to give you just a spatial recognition of how much that is, that's almost the whole of Australia covered in forest, twice burnt and put into the atmosphere. That's what we've done with all the fossil fuels we've burnt to date. That gives you a sense of the scale of the problem if we want to try and grow more trees. We have to grow the entire of Australia covered in really dense, deep, sort of 50 to 100 meter rainforest, which we can't do because we don't have enough water. There's the central of Australia is a desert because there's no water there. And we can't do it over the rest of the planet as well. And plus, we can't grow trees where we need to grow food. So we've got a really big problem in terms of where we can actually grow trees and the scale at which we can do that on a terrestrial sense. And I think it's really important to understand that scale of the problem. So then if we know that we've got all this carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and we need to share it, to store it somewhere, Well, then where can we store it? And this is a really good example here. We've got 820 units sitting in the atmosphere. To give you a sense, all of the vegetation on Earth is currently 600 units. So we're saying that we need to more than double the amount of vegetation on the entire on the terrestrial space. And we know that that's also at risk of burning down. So although it might be a really good thing, we do need to massively increase the size of our forests. Because we're destroying so much habitat for so many organisms. It's not going to be enough to actually solve the carbon dioxide problem in the atmosphere. So we need to look at other places we can put it. Now, the surface ocean is 900. It's kind of a similar sort of size, similar magnitude. But we also, and I'll get to how long does it actually stay in each one of these different parts of the system. The deep ocean has heaps of carbon in it. So actually putting an extra, say, half of the units that are currently in the atmosphere, let's say 400 down into the deep ocean, it wouldn't even notice. There's so much there. And that's a really similar thing in soils, in rocks and sediments. The problem is that actually all the carbon that is currently stored in the ocean is basically the same volume that we've currently got stored in fossil fuels. Now, I'm not sure if that's taking into account from the 1800s onwards, where did they start that number from? But you can see it's a really big number, right? If we burnt all of this and basically put it all into the atmosphere, that would be devastating to the planet. It would really be a big problem. So we've got to keep all that in the ground and stop using it. So this gives you a sense of sort of where all the carbon currently sits, and therefore where it would be easiest to try and put it back into. And of all of these, rocks and sediments is one of the solutions, soils is one of the solutions, and the deep ocean is one of the solutions.